Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to my presentation at the IEA Virtual World Conference 2021. I'm greeting you from Hannover, from Germany, and let me just share my screen with you so that you can see my PowerPoint presentation. The title of my presentation is The Impact of Weather Shocks on Household Welfare, and I'm going to provide some evidence from panel data for rural household from Thailand and Vietnam. This presentation is part of the session on shocks, coping strategies and vulnerability. Now, the motivation of my paper is as follows. Extreme weather events have very severe effects on rural households in the global south. And here I'm talking about droughts, about floods or storms. And these extreme weather events have become actually more frequent over time and also more severe. And specifically rural households in the global south are affected by these extreme weather shocks. This is because they often work in agriculture, which is a weather sensitive sector, or because their welfare level is quite low. If you look at the literature on the effects of these shocks on welfare, you find ambiguous results, and very often these papers just look at one country. Now, I have now data, panel data from two countries, Vietnam and Thailand, and this is equivalent data from around 5,800 observations in each country. And these two countries, Vietnam and Thailand, also belong to the 10 most affected countries worldwide in the last 2 decades. Now, the research questions I have raised here are, first of all, what are the effects of the 3 major types of weather shocks on household welfare? And the weather shocks, as I said, are storms, droughts, and floods, and the welfare is measured in terms of income, consumption, and poverty. The second question is, well, to what extent do the impacts differ between the two countries, Thailand and Vietnam? And what are useful mitigation measures to these weather shocks? Now, the data I'm using are from the research project Poverty Dynamics and Sustainable Development, a long-term panel project in Thailand and Vietnam. So this is a project which is being funded by the German Research Foundation, and it includes many waves, up to 9 waves now from these two countries. Comparable surveys have been conducted in the two countries, and I'm going to use household panel data from 2010 to 2013 to 2016, and we have in our panels around 4,000 households, and they are in these 3 provinces which are indicated on the map in Thailand and Vietnam. By the way, this data is also available free of charge. Please have a look at the homepage of TVZEP, the Thailand-Vietnam Socioeconomic Panel Project, and you find further details there. Now, let's first of all look at some descriptives. What are the number of households which have been affected by weather shocks? And you can see that, first of all, drought is the most common weather shock. So it has affected around 22–23% of the households in Thailand, which is shown here in the gray bar, and around 15% in Vietnam. The floods are the second most common weather shock. They have been a bit more severe in Vietnam as compared to Thailand. And storms is sort of the third most common weather shock, much more severely affecting Vietnam. And that's partly due to the long coastline they have. So the geographic location does play a big role here. The further figure here shows the average loss due to weather shocks. And you can see again Thailand and Vietnam. Vietnam is in blue, Thailand is in gray. And you can see that each weather shock actually brings large average losses to the countries, but the severity differs to quite some extent. So in Vietnam, the most severe are the storms. They have the largest losses, they are leading to the largest amount of losses, followed by droughts and by floods. And in Thailand, the most severe are the floods, followed by drought and by storm. So the floods are most severe in Thailand, but not so much in Vietnam. And this is partly because Vietnam has a better irrigation system. Then I have some further descriptives of the households, which I thought are particularly interesting. So if you compare the farmland area per household in the two countries, you find it's much larger in Thailand than in Vietnam. The number of phones and number of motorbikes per household is similar in both countries, but it's increasing over time in both countries. The household size is similar and it's decreasing. The average education level in both countries is very low, but in Vietnam it's slightly higher. And the share of households with access to internet is higher in Vietnam than in Thailand. So these are just a few facts which I wanted to share. And one further figure on the descriptives, you can see here the per capita consumption income over the 3 years in the two countries. You can see overall consumption has increased in both countries. You can also see here that the farmers in Thailand are better off than in Vietnam, but the growth in Vietnam is a little bit higher as compared to Thailand. Okay, so let's look at the econometric results. We have estimated fixed effects regression. And you can see here the impact of weather shocks on the rural household income. And you see that the household income is affected by weather shocks, and here we have sort of the per capita income. I should mention we have the per capita farm income and the per capita non-farm income, and this is given for Vietnam and also for Thailand. And as I said, the household income is affected by weather shocks in both countries. In Vietnam, we have higher welfare effects by storms, and in Vietnam by floods. And income is also positively affected by many other factors, like, for example, farmland in Thailand, or by the phones, how many phones you own, it's highly significant in both countries, or education as well. Let's look at the impact of weather shocks on household poverty. I'm not showing the results on consumption because they are similar to income, but the one on poverty are a bit more interesting here. And you can see that all weather shocks again have negative effects on poverty. In Vietnam, poverty is specifically caused by storms and floods, and also by droughts, and in Thailand by floods and droughts. So it's actually confirming the descriptive results which we have. We find that livestock is contributing to the poverty reduction in both countries, also phones, and also education. Now that brings me to the following conclusion. High priority should be given to rural education in the two countries, specifically in the rural areas, and also farm mechanization. So promotion of these two do contribute to poverty reduction and increased income. Then in Thailand, specifically the accumulation of farmland should be encouraged, whereas in Vietnam, the supporting of livestock production and investing more in internet infrastructure should be promoted. Now this brings me to my last slides. You can see the paper has been published in Weather and Climate Extreme. It's common work with my Vietnamese colleagues, and yes, thank you very much.